Morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thanks everybody for being on. We got a light group today, don't we? It that's okay though. Mr. Jones, good morning. Stacy, good morning. What else we got on? Miss Lori Scott, good morning. Here comes Sherry Volner. Okay, we got some more people coming in. So Leo, if you'd admit them in, please, as they come.
Yes,
Small
sir.
group though, but probably because expireds can be a little scary. Anybody ever thought that? Ever been a little scared of expireds? It can happen. People are sometimes intimidated because the phone calls don't always go like we want them to, you know? And so, but also expireds can be a fantastic opportunity to generate business. And so I want to talk about this. I'm going to talk about the way I did it, and I taught my team to do it for a very long time. We did a lot of expireds. It's how I built my business. I built my business calling expireds every single day, and we took a lot of listings from expired. So we're going to dive into this. We're going to get going, and let's talk about one, why. Why call expireds? So the main reason we're calling expireds is they already have a motivation and they've already expressed an interest to sell. So we know that a person whose home is on the market, even if they say they're no longer selling, there was at some point an intention to sell their house. And so it's what we call low hanging fruit. It's people that have already raised their hand and said, I want to sell my house. They tried, it didn't work. Their listing is now expired or canceled. And it's an opportunity for us to go help them accomplish their goal of getting their home sold. It's one of the fastest ways to set an appointment. Now, I started calling expireds in 2011. When I shifted into selling, I kind of got out of flipping houses and that, and I shifted into selling real estate full time. I knew two things. I knew one, I needed money, and two, the fastest way to get it was to call expireds. And so I was terrified to call expireds um, because I didn't know what to say. And so I would literally, but I knew I was two things. I needed money. I was falling behind on my bills. I had tons of student loan debt. And I just started doing it. But I would often just be like, please don't answer. Please don't answer. Please don't answer. Because, I was pushing myself to do the activity, but I didn't want to be doing it. So I think that's important to know too, that as you start doing this, if this is uncomfortable at first, that is completely normal. It's going to be uncomfortable until you do it enough to where it just becomes very comfortable. And over time, it will become comfortable. And once you start getting business from it, it gets easier to do. And so, why call expireds? Because you're calling people that are motivated to sell their house. So, it's one of the fastest ways to go get an appointment. Now, where do we get the data? Where do we get expired information? You could go to your MLS and pull up expireds and canceleds, and then click on the tax records, and then go to like anywho.com, or there's other sites like that where you can try to pull up their information for free. In my opinion, it takes too long. So I started paying for a service quickly because I don't want to spend, tons of time researching somebody's phone number just to find out it's no longer a valid number, or, it was a landline that was disconnected years ago. So a couple of ways to get expired data. Mojosells.com is a dialer system. It's a dialer that you could pay for the dialer, meaning it's an auto dialer. And then you can buy data from it. So you can buy for sale by owner data, you can buy expired data, you can buy circle prospecting list. RedX is one of the more cost-effective ways to get expired data. So RedX, if you Google it, it's going to come up. Vulcan 7, one of the more pricier ones, but also one of the more accurate from a contact information perspective. So of all of these, I've used almost all of these. The only one I haven't used is Espresso Agent. The other ones, though, I have used. What I would say is Vulcan 7, while the most expensive, had the best data. So it had the most valid phone numbers. Make sure too that all of these do, but just make 100% certain too that you scrub against the do not call list. Very, very, very important that I emphasize that. Now, I've made tens of thousands of phone calls over the years, and I've only been sued once for a do not call violation, and it wasn't even me, it was one of my team members, but I still got sued because it was my team. It cost me $7,000. And so we had a do not call violation. My One of my team members called a guy who was a lawyer, and he does this for a living. He records phone calls of people that call him, and then he sues them. And so he baited her into saying he was going to sell his house. And then we got served, I don't know, a few days later, and we got sued, and so we had to settle with them. It cost $7,000. So that is not to scare you, but it is to let you know that it can happen. Now, it happened once out of 14 years of calling these, I guess, and we made, honestly, we probably made millions of dollars in commissions calling expired. So the $7,000, while it still hurts, was kind of a speed bump, a small speed bump in the grand scheme of things, but it can happen. So make 100% certain that whatever data service you're purchasing, it is scrubbed against the DNC, the do not call list. Can't emphasize that enough. Don't call people because I've had some agents too that they'll get data and it's scrubbed against the do not call, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to call the do not call anyway." Highly advise against it. I would not do that. There's enough out there that aren't on the do not call list that you can go build a good business. So of all the data points up here, in my opinion, Vulcan 7 has had the best data, but any of them work. They all provide data. The bulk of them that I know that I've used do scrub against the do not call list. So just make sure that's super important as well. So what you do here, though, is when you pay for one of these services, you essentially can log in every day and it's going to have a whole list of everyone's homes that have expired, their names, their contact information, and it's a good way you just start calling them. And so, what'll happen here is it just you can also categorize it by certain areas. Maybe you only want to work expireds in certain areas or canceled as well. And so that's an option too. You can set your criteria. Maybe you don't want to drive an hour to go on a listing appointment. So you can set the criteria not to receive inform or expireds in those areas. So you can tailor this as well to the areas that you serve. But what's nice about this is every morning you wake up, you can log into your system and you get to see exactly how many homes expired. And then you have a list of all the data right there. So it's very fast. I used to call expireds at 8 a.m. every day. We're going to get into that. Before we do that, let's talk about challenges. What are some challenges with calling expireds? Now, when I say expireds, I'm also talking about canceleds. Certain MLSs, you have canceleds, you have expireds, you have withdrawn. Withdrawn, I learned my lesson with withdrawns one time a long time ago. I didn't know the difference in the three, because every MLS is going to have definitions for what each one is. I didn't realize that if you have a withdrawn in your MLS, what withdrawn means is that the agent still has a valid listing agreement with the client, but they've decided to take their home off the market. So do not call withdrawn listings. I didn't know that. I was calling withdrawns, and I had an agent call me and said, "Hey, I got an active agreement. You're making a violation here." Learned my lesson pretty quick. So I like to just make mistakes and then learn, I don't like to look into stuff. So I learned that. So just keep that in mind. Now, what's an expired? An expired means that they signed a listing agreement with their realtor and it ran its length of time. It was a 3-month agreement, a 6-month agreement, a 12-month agreement. It ran its course and it expired. It's no longer a valid listing agreement. Canceled means that they canceled their agreement with their agent. Maybe they signed a 6-month listing agreement. 3 months in, they weren't happy or some circumstance changed and they canceled their agreement. So just keep that in mind. But if you see withdrawns, do not call them. They still have an active agreement with their realtor. So don't call withdrawns. Canceled and expireds, though, fair game. Let's talk about, though, what are the challenges with expireds? Now, from my experience, oftentimes they've had a bad experience with their previous realtor and they aren't thrilled about talking to realtors. And now their listing just came off the market and they're getting bombarded with people calling them. Now, when I say bombarded with people calling them, when I was calling these every day, there was about 8 agents that did this consistently. And that was it out of 12,000 in our market here in St. Louis. So there wasn't many doing that. So that's the other opportunity here is there's not that many people calling. Now, when Keller Williams would run one of their training courses, everybody would be calling expireds for that week, and then it would stop. So people would do it because they were forced to do it in bold, and then so the people would get seriously bombarded with phone calls. They're getting like 100 agents calling them. But typically, there's not that many people that are working these expireds on a consistent basis. So that's why it's also a very big opportunity for people that decide to do it. Now, the challenge, though, is a lot of these people have had a bad experience with their agent, and they're going to be saying, "Why are you calling me now? Where were you at when my home was on the market?" One of the objections. We'll talk about that. But also, sellers may be receiving a lot of calls from realtors, and they're upset about it. You're the 8th agent to call me. That's why I used to call first thing in the morning, because I didn't want to be the 8th agent. I wanted to be the first agent to call them. And so 8 a.m., I started making calls. Some people are like, "That's so early." I've only gotten pushback on an 8 a.m. call maybe once or twice. where people are like, why are you calling me so early? Most people are up, they're going, it's 8 o'clock, it's the normal business hours. So I used to call 8 a.m. I would start making my calls because by about 10:30, when I was finishing up with my calls, I would start getting that objection more often. Hey, you're the sixth person to call me. You're the fourth person to call me. So I used to like to call early. And then also, the seller will most likely be interviewing multiple agents, which means you have to have your listing presentation really dialed in. You have to be able to set yourself apart from the competition because you will be competing against other agents. Now, the nice thing is because there's only a handful of people typically calling these, you're usually going to compete against the same agents. So once you start beating those agents, you know what you're doing is working, right? And when you're not beating them, what you do is you call the seller and you say, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. I saw that you hired so and so. Out of curiosity, what made you decide to hire them over me? And then they're going to tell you, they're going to say, well, they said they were going to do this, that, or this or that. And now you can choose to add that into your presentation and start doing it as well. And that's what I used to do. I used to go on listing appointments and I would lose them and I wouldn't win. And I would call and ask and say, out of curiosity, why did you hire so and so over me? What did they say they're going to do? And they would tell me. And I'm looking to get better and improve my business. And so they would tell me. Then I would start adding those things in. And I added enough things in to where I no longer started losing, I no longer lost listings. I started winning them. So that's the nice thing too, is if you go on these and you lose up front and you lose at first, you can build your criteria, your presentation to be so good that eventually you won't lose anymore. And the other thing is you have to become proficient in overcoming objection handlers because when calling expireds, you will get objections. It's very rare, it has happened, but it's very rare that somebody's going to say, yeah, you sound nice. Come on out and list my house. It's not going to happen very often. Hey, you sound great, Scott. I know you look good too. I can tell by your voice. Come on out. Right? So no, it's going to happen. And so that's where you're going to have to become good at overcoming objections, which is what we'll talk about here today. So, direct mail. Has anybody ever sent direct mail to expireds? It can work. It can. I'm not a big believer. I think direct mail can be an extremely effective tool in things like farming, different things of that category. Even for sale by owners, direct mail can work well because most people, like if you're farming or you're doing FSBOs, they're not looking to relist their home immediately. So with direct mail with expireds, though, a lot of these sellers are going to want to get their home back on the market quickly. And so if I have to go send direct mail and it takes a day or two, or with the post office during holidays, maybe longer to get to their house, it can be slow. It can be slow to get there, and somebody else that picked up the phone and called could have already listed the property by the time that mailer arrives. It can be expensive. So for me back in the day, I didn't have any budget. I could barely afford the $50 or whatever it was to pay for Red X back then when I first started. So I didn't have the budget for it. So it can be expensive. And also, sellers are receiving a lot of mail from a lot of realtors. So I promise you, I've gone on a lot of appointments when I've got people, I've sit down at the table, they were signing the agreements, and they would say, oh, yeah, some of these people said they have buyers. And they pulled out of a drawer a stack of mailers that they received from realtors saying they had a buyer. They're like, maybe you want to call these realtors to see if they have a buyer. So even though they got all of the different mailers, I was the one getting the appointment because I picked up the phone, called, and got in front of them right away. And so just keep that in mind. Direct mail can work, but I feel like for expireds, the fastest way and the most effective way is to pick up the phone and call the seller. So, any questions on this so far from anybody? If you do, feel free to unmute, let me know. Also, here's our process. So, our process for converting expireds. We call every morning, Monday through Friday and Saturday as well. Saturday is actually a really good call, really good day. I would start Saturday calls at 9, not 8. But Saturdays were a great day for converting expireds. Also, Saturday morning appointments on expireds, and I'm going to talk about getting in, with an expired, my goal was always to get into an appointment as fast as possible. So if I could get in front of a seller, I wanted to get there the same day if possible. And so the longer I set my appointment out, the further or the better the probability of that appointment canceling. So if I call my expireds this morning and I could set an appointment for this evening or this afternoon, I'm doing that. I want to go on that appointment as quickly as possible because if I set it for Friday, chances are that appointment's going to cancel or somebody else is going to come in and list the property before me. So keep that in mind. But I called all new canceled and expired leads first thing in the morning at 8 a.m. Now, after I called the new expireds and canceled, I would move on to the leads that are 2 to 60 days old, and I would start calling those. So anything that maybe I tried to call yesterday that didn't answer, I'm going to those. So I hit the brand new ones immediately, and then I worked my way into the older leads that were in my system. But again, setting appointments quickly. The only time I wouldn't set an appointment was I never liked Friday evening appointments. I would rather set it for Saturday morning. Saturday morning appointments had a really high conversion. I think that's because this is my own personal belief, but Friday, if Friday at 5 or 6 o'clock, who feels like doing anything? Like as far as work related, right? Or having to think. Like the week's over, we want to be done. It's like it's the weekend, I just want to relax. So I found Friday evening appointments had a low conversion rate. Saturday morning appointments had a really high conversion rate. And so if I was setting appointments like on Friday, I would set them instead of that night, I would set them for the next morning. But other than that, I tried to get on my appointments same day when possible. So I was always ready. I showed up to the office. I was ready to make my calls, ready to go on appointments with the anticipation that I was going to go meet with somebody today. But again, 8 a.m., I did this consistently for years. 8 a.m., I would start making my calls, and I would typically wrap up around 10:30. And so what I was doing was calling the new leads first, then moving on to all of the old leads with like, 2, 3, 4 days old. And then I would move on to my follow-ups. Anybody that I had good conversations with that maybe I didn't set an appointment with yet that I needed to follow up with, I would move on to my follow-ups. And that's how my day looked. Now, let's talk about the script. So the script, extremely important. I'd like to keep the script very short and to the point when possible, because you only have about 10 seconds to capture their information or capture their attention, excuse me, before they're hanging up. So, hi, my name is Michael. I'm a local realtor in the area. I see your home at 123 Main Street's come off the market, and I was wondering if it's sold, or if not, is it still available? No, it's still available. Now, I know it didn't sell, but I'm still going to ask the question because I want to get them talking. No, it didn't sell. It came off the market. I appreciate you sharing that information with me. Now, if we could get your home sold in the next 30 days or sooner and get you top dollar, would you consider getting it back on the market? This is where the objections start. Well, whole list of objections we're going to go through. But this is my opening script. It's not, hi, I'm Michael with Network Global, #1 realtor in the area. It's short and to the point. And I don't even use my last name. Hey, my name's Michael. I'm a local realtor in the area. I see your home at 123 Main Street's come off the market, and I was wondering if it's sold, or if not, is it still available? Now, will some people hang up on you immediately? Yes, they will. And that's okay. I did a script practice a long time ago in my old office, and the person I role played with somebody, and they hung up on me, and everybody laughed. And what do you do in that situation? Everyone's like, ha 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 ha, yeah, you got shut down. Well, no, he hung up on me. I called the next person. And so keep that in mind too. When somebody hangs up on you, don't take it personal. When somebody's angry or cantankerous with you, don't take it personal. They don't know who you are, right? They're not angry at you because of who you are. They're just angry at the scenario that they're in currently. They're angry that their house was on the market. It didn't sell. Now they're getting a bunch of phone calls from people saying they could sell their house, but don't take it personal. That's the biggest thing you have to keep in mind here, is that when you start making these calls, you will face rejection, and a lot of it. And that's part of the process. And so with that, I used to be in my I had this little tiny office. It was like 5 by 5, maybe smaller. And I had this little cheap computer, and I was making these calls, and I would feel so defeated when I would get hung up on, or somebody would get angry at me. And then I learned not to take it personal. They don't know who I am. They don't know me as a person. They're not angry at me. They're just angry at their scenario or their situation. So keep that in mind as well. Now, when I say, if we can get your home sold and get you top dollar, would you consider it? This is where people often give me another objection. So they start giving me some form of an objection. Either they say, yes, fantastic, when's an opportunity? I'd love to come out and meet with you. But a lot of times they're going to say, I don't know. We're thinking it over. We're this or that. And that's where the objections come in. So what we want to find early in the call is motivation. Why was their home on the market? Especially if they say, no, we're going to take it off the market. We need to find motivation early in this call so we can use that motivation to our advantage to then help them accomplish their goal. So if your home's sold, where were you planning? I understand you're not interested in selling now. Maybe they say, no, we're not going to sell. Totally understand you're not interested in selling. If your home had sold, where were you planning on moving to? Well, we were going to move to the Lake of the Ozarks. We have a condo there. We just wanted to get this sold and get moved there. Hey, that's fantastic. That's exciting. You want to move to the lake? How soon were you wanting to be there? Well, we planned on being there, by Christmas, but it didn't work out because this house didn't sell. Totally understand. Now, are you giving up on the goal of getting to your condo at the Lake of the Ozarks and getting this home sold? Well, no, absolutely not. We're just trying to figure it out. But that's what we want to find out is what is the motivation? And that's where a lot of realtors go sideways here. They start talking about everything that they do to sell homes, and they don't find out why it's important for this individual to get their home sold. Once I know why it's important for this person to get their home sold, I can help them accomplish that goal. Right? I can be that resource to help them get to where they need to be. So figuring out that early, if your home sold, where we I and I always like to repeat and affirm back what people are telling me. So if somebody says, "No, we're not selling. Taking it off the market, we're not selling." I totally understand you're not selling and you wish to take it off the market. And out of curiosity, if your home sold, where were you planning on moving to? And then they're going to share with it. Now, sometimes will they say none of your business? It has happened, but it's rare. Sometimes it's none of your business. I get it. Okay. I get it. But it's rare. And that's the stuff like you have to be prepared for that. Like 1 out of 10 might say none of your business. 90% though are going to give you an answer. So again, that's where when we get into this, we have to know we will face some level of rejection and it's normal and it's okay. We're not going to win every call we go on. But again, figuring out motivation, extremely important. Now, continue to dig deeper. As I get into conversation here, and I'm having conversation with these people, and I ask them, where were you planning on moving? And they tell me, and I get that motivation. If we could help you accomplish that goal, would you be interested in still selling? And they say things like, yeah, maybe, yeah, we still want to sell it. Fantastic. What do you think stopped your home from selling? This is a big one too, because I want to start listening to what they think should have been done to get the home sold. Well, my last agent didn't do any open houses. My last agent didn't bring a buyer. They didn't bring a single buyer. All these other agents showed it. We had 86 showings, no offers. And I'm listening for things now. For one, what are they expecting from their next realtor? And two, what do we think stopped it? If we had 80 showings on the house and no offers, it's most likely price. Either that or the condition of the house is terrible and it's priced too high. But I'm listening for things there as I start asking these questions. What do you think stopped your home? I also want to be listening for what do they expect from the next realtor? Hey, if they're like, my agent didn't do any open houses, well, maybe that's something I need to do in order to make them happy to help them get their home sold. Or when I go on my listing presentation, I tailor my presentation around what my open house process is. So I'm listening for things of that nature. Then I'm going to ask, if I could get your home sold and net you what you need and help you get to Lake of the Ozarks, Florida, wherever they're going, that would be a good thing. Wouldn't you agree? The wouldn't you agree is called a tie down. I'm going to get them to agree with me. It's verbal judo, if you will. Wouldn't you agree? All right. Yes, I would. I would agree. Absolutely. You see, myself, and if you don't have a team, just say, myself, I specialize in getting homes sold just like yours. You see, sometimes even the best homes don't sell the first time on the market. I'm confident with my proven and my proactive and proven and marketing strategy, I'll be able to get your home sold, to get your home sold for top dollar and get you moved to Lake of the Ozarks. So again, scripting, right? If I could get your home sold, and I like to use this one a lot, if I could get your home sold and get you moved to Florida, that would be a good thing, wouldn't it? Well, yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. I specialize in getting homes sold. Some of the best homes don't sell the first time around. And I'm confident that after I come out, you're going to understand why I'm going to be a great resource to help you accomplish your goal of getting it sold to get you moved to Florida or Lake or wherever. So again, it's about having the scripting in place to be able to have these conversations. Because when I first started making these calls, I would say, "Hi, my name's Michael. I'm a local realtor with Keller Williams Realty, and I was calling to see if your home is still available." And they'd be like, "Oh yeah," and I would say, "Well, are you still planning on selling?" "No, we're not." "Okay, thank you." And I would hang up. There was nothing else after that. Or I'd see a house for $600,000 and I'd be like, "Oof, I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to call this one for 60 grand," because I had no confidence in my ability. All right. And then I would start making the calls and I would literally be like, "Don't answer. Please don't answer. Please don't answer." Because at least I was doing the activity. I just didn't want them to answer though. And so, but again, once you start getting good at the scripting, these conversations become very easy. So I want to dig deep. I want to figure out motivation. I want to figure out what's important to them, where they're wanting to go, and how I can be a resource to help them accomplish that goal. Now, let's talk about some common seller objections. Let's start with some common ones. I'm going to work with, I've never heard of you. I'm going to work with a local realtor that sells homes in my neighborhood. So if that comes up, it sounds like it's important that you have a realtor that's very familiar with your area. Is that correct? Yes, it is. May I share? Now, if you are the realtor that's very familiar with their area, use it to your advantage. But if you're not, I used to call expireds in a very large radius, that in areas that I wasn't always familiar with. So I had to be able to overcome that objection. And so it sounds like it's important that you have a realtor that's very familiar with your area. Is that correct? Yes, it is. May I share a concern I have? The likelihood of someone buying your home that's already living in your area, insert their name, John, it's actually quite small. We have a much greater chance of finding a buyer for your home outside the area. Does that make sense? So again, it gets them thinking, yeah, you're right. The day of the local realtor, real estate has changed over the years. I've been in it 20 years now. It's changed a lot. And buyers have way more access to information. And the importance of having that one realtor that really hones in on one specific area isn't as important anymore because we know a lot of buyers are searching online. There's so much more access out there. So again, the likelihood of someone buying your home that is already living in the area is actually quite small. We have a much greater chance of finding a buyer for your home outside of the area. Does that make sense? Well, yeah, I guess it does. You see, in today's market, we have to be able to cast a wide net and reach buyers from all over the area, including relocation buyers moving in from out of state. Can you see how that would be a benefit to you? Yeah, I suppose so. Also, John, 97% of home buyers start their home search online, and that's why we focus heavily on internet marketing to get your home in front of these potential buyers. This is exactly why we should get together for 15 minutes to discuss our proactive approach to bring you more buyers. So we start throwing out some statistics, we start throwing out some things like that. And my big thing too is on a listing appointment, they say, how long is this going to take? It's 15 minutes. So people don't want to give you an hour, but they will be willing to give you 15 minutes. Now, do the presentations run longer than 15 minutes? Typically. But I could sit down with them and go through my presentation, my listing presentation in 15 minutes. But typically they're going to want to walk you through the house. They're going to want to ask questions. So it's going to run longer and that's okay. But I don't want to be like, yeah, it's going to take about an hour. Do you have an hour to spare? It's 15 minutes. I could get in and out in 15 minutes if I needed to. So that's what I tell people. Do you have 15 minutes? We can get together for 15 minutes. I can share with you my proactive approach to bring you more buyers to get your home sold. So ultimately, we can help you get to Florida to be closer to the grandkids. And so keep that in mind. Now, 97% of home buyers start their search online. That means in our listing presentation, we have to have some slides in there. And if you haven't seen the listing presentation I use, you can go to networkglobalagents.com under listings, and our presentation is in there. Take a look at it. That's the one I used on all my presentations. But it highlights the importance of how we're marketing the property online as well. Now, if somebody says, I'm going to stay with the same agent, this one came up a lot as well. I'm going to stay with the same agent. Great. Tell me what specifically is the benefit for you to do that? We're just going to, they said they can sign the paperwork and we can get it relisted. And I always ask that too. Have you signed a new listing agreement with them yet? No, we haven't yet. It expired. We haven't signed it. If they have signed listing agreement with their agent, just move on. Hey, good luck on the sale because we don't want to overstep and try to pursue somebody that has a valid agreement. The bulk of the time they haven't though. Have you signed an agreement? No. What specifically is the benefit for you to stay with your last agent? What is your last agent going to do differently this time to make sure it sells that it didn't do the last time? Now, if you knew I could sell it for you and net you what you need, wouldn't you at least consider it a second opinion? So that one's going to come up. Now, this one I like. When they say I'm going to stay with my same agent, this one I like as well. So if they push back and I say that and they're like, no, yeah, we're still going to stick with our last agent, I totally appreciate that. That's great. And what I'm hearing you say is that you feel obligated to your last agent because they invested time and money in your house, right? Yeah, absolutely. And when they originally listed your home, they most likely intended to sell it, right? Yeah, of course. And they probably did everything they could to get it sold, wouldn't you agree? Well, sure. Exactly. And yet the house didn't sell. And see, that's where they're kind of like, oh, you're right. It makes them think. Right? I'm convinced it's not for a lack of effort on your realtor's part. It's most likely in the approach. Your house needs a different approach. Now, you don't owe me anything, and you really don't owe your last agent anything either, but you do owe yourself the very best, and it certainly wouldn't hurt to hear what I do to get home sold, would it? Yeah, I guess not. It's exactly why we need to get together today. Talked to one of my old team members the other day. He was calling expireds. He used this script, and they're like, yeah, you're right. I guess it wouldn't hurt. He got the appointment. It gets them thinking because people often say, I'm going to stick with my same agent. And we just say, okay, but it gets them thinking. Look, when your last agent listed the house, they're not a bad person, right? They did everything they could to sell your house, and yet it didn't sell. It's most likely in the approach. We have to have a different approach to get your home sold. So when they say I'm sticking with my same agent, this one's important. We'll send these scripts out to everybody as well that's on the call as well. And please, if you have questions, let me know also. So anybody on right now, if you have questions as we're moving through this, feel free to unmute and ask. Um, so what do you do different from other realtors? You're just the same as other realtors in the group. So what do we do different? Right? It's a great question. Some realtors put the sign in the yard, place it in the MLS, and pray somebody else sells the property for them. We go an extra step. We actually go a lot more, many more extra steps, but we do prospecting on behalf of our sellers, and we aggressively market the home to get the property sold for top dollar in no time. It's definitely a different experience with us than any other realtors. Now, what does that mean, aggressively prospect? So one of the things I teach is that if your MLS has reverse prospecting, you should be using it. So when you go into your listing and there's a little, and you click on it in the MLS, and there's sorry, my daughter's upstairs screaming. And so, and you, uh, you put you go to reverse prospecting, you can see, and this is something I used in my listing presentation because it's going to separate you from the bulk of the agents out there that don't do this. Reverse prospecting is an extremely effective tool when utilized. It works really well. So what reverse prospecting is I can go into the MLS once I list your home, and I can then see every realtor who set their home buyer up with the search, and their search criteria matches your property. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin emailing these agents, and then I'm going to pick up the phone and call them. And I'm going to call them, and I'm going to say, I see that you have a client that might be a good fit for my listing. Did you receive my email? Do you anticipate setting up a showing to come see the house? And furthermore, when their client saves your home as a favorite, I'm going to pick up the phone and call that realtor immediately. I'm going to email them and call the realtor and let them know their client saved your home as a favorite. And when do they anticipate coming to see it? Now, I'm going to do this every single week until we get your home sold. And this is a way of me being very proactive and getting your property in front of buyers who are motivated and want to purchase a home like yours. See, that's going the extra mile. That's not just putting it on the website. Now, of course, once we list it in the MLS, it's going to auto feed out to hundreds of websites. It's going to be visible to everyone online. But what are we doing differently to differentiate ourselves? And what I found is that coming from a proactive approach, I'm picking up the phone just like I picked up the phone to call you to sit in front of you today. I'm going to be picking up the phone every day, reaching out to agents who have buyers. I'm going to be following up with people that inquire on your home from my website. I'm going to be making phone calls every day to get your property sold. Then I'm also going to be updating you with everything I'm doing on a weekly basis to get your home sold as well. That way you're never going a week and thinking, what's going on with my house? I haven't heard from my agent. Because that's the other thing, guys, that so many people that are expireds, when I would go on the appointment, I would ask, how was your experience with your last agent? They said communication was bad. So I added in my presentation what was called the communication guarantee. What is my communication guarantee? It's that you're going to hear from me every single week with an update on everything I did to get your home sold that week, as well as any showings that we had, any feedback. You're never going to go a week wondering what's going on with your home. That was peace of mind for a lot of people because they're like, you know what, my last agent, it would take days to get a call back. I didn't hear from him for 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month. We wanted to drop the price. We couldn't get a return call. Those are all real things that have happened. It's kind of mind blowing. Like, think about that. Client wants to drop the price and they can't get a hold of their agent. It's insane, right? Like, to everybody on this call, it's like, what? That doesn't make sense, but it's real life. I mean, those are real things that people have told me. It's unbelievable how the communication is very poor. So just think of that as ways to start differentiating yourself from the agents. Now, I often say, you think about it, there's a lot of agents out there in all of our markets that we're in. There's thousands of agents, right? But they're not all the same, right? Meaning we can separate ourselves from the pack by going above and beyond for clients and doing things a little bit different and being more proactive. And that's what we have to share with people, is that we're not all the same. We do a lot more for our clients than your average realtor. Now, what if they say, I already found an agent? A couple of scripts here. So if they already found an agent, that's fantastic. You have another agent in mind. Have you already signed paperwork? No, we haven't. If you had to go to the doctor because you had an illness and you found out it involved surgery, you would want a second opinion, wouldn't you? Well, sure. And this is kind of a weird script. Once you use it, though, it actually works really well. I know this isn't surgery, and yet it is financial surgery on your house. Let's meet for 15 or 20 minutes, and you'll see why so many people have decided to hire me over other agents. If you knew I could net you more money and a quicker sale, you would want to at least meet with me, right? And so simple things like that get people thinking. Yeah, we found another agent, but I guess it wouldn't hurt. Wouldn't hurt to get a second opinion. Wouldn't hurt. My whole goal here with expireds was to go get in front of as many people as possible. Because the more people I met with face to face, the higher the probability was that I was going to get a listing. And so even if they told me I found another agent, I'm going to ask them if they haven't signed paperwork, you a second opinion would make sense, wouldn't it? And so keep that in mind. Very, very important. Now, I'm going to sell it myself. Who's ever called expireds and got this one? It happens a lot. All right, I'm going to sell it myself. So that's fantastic. I understand you wish to sell your home yourself. And what specifically is the benefit for you to do that? Well, we're going to save on commission. We just feel like you realtors don't do anything, this or that. You're going to get a lot of different objections. And I always agree with them. They could say you realtors are terrible, and I would agree. I totally get it. And after what you've been through, I certainly understand. In fact, you're generally better off being a for sale by owner than to work with an agent that doesn't understand the market and what it takes to sell a house. Now, most agents, again, is another script, do what I call the three P's. They put a sign in the yard, they place your home in the MLS, and pray some other agent will come along and sell it for them. See, I actually go a lot further than that. I study the market every day. I stay in constant communication with my sellers about their specific market every week. And I also proactively and aggressively prospect for buyers for my listings every day. In fact, for every 70 new prospects I spoke with last year, something of mine sold. Now, isn't it the kind of assurance you would want if you were looking for an agent? Yeah, I guess so. What does that mean? It means I'm picking up the phone, I'm making calls, I'm being proactive, I'm doing whatever I can to help them get their home sold. I'm not just going to sit back, put it on the MLS, and hope somebody else sells it. So, again, my whole focus on when I would go on expireds was I'm going to be the most proactive agent to help you get your home sold. It wasn't I'm number one because I didn't have the stats back then to really differentiate myself. I was competing against agents that were in the top 10, in our MLS, and I wasn't even anywhere near that. I was newer in the industry. I was newer to selling homes. So I had to differentiate myself by I'm going to be proactive and aggressive. I'm going to be the most aggressive agent to get your home sold. I might not be the number one agent, but I am going to be the one that cares the most. I am going to be the one that's going to work every day to get your property sold. Also, if you're an agent that doesn't have a lot of listings and you're competing against somebody that has 50 listings, well, hey, look, I've got one of one listings. All of my attention is going to be on getting your home sold. It's not going to be my attention on 50 other listings trying to sell them. So again, use things to your advantage. Now, if you're a top agent, use it to your advantage, right? I'm a top agent. I know the market. I know what it takes to get home sold. So you just have to think about different ways to position where your experience level is and where what your situation is. So keep that in mind. When you're newer to the industry, position it as I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to be picking up the phone. My attention, my time, it's all going to be focused on getting your home sold. When you're experienced and you have a good business and you've got a lot of business, it's you've got the systems, you've got the experience, you have the know-how to get the property sold. So we're taking it off the market. This one would happen a lot too. Nope, we've taken it off the market. We've decided to stay. Most of the time, this is just an objection. They're not really intending to stay. They're frustrated. They're a little embarrassed, maybe. They told all their family and friends they were moving. Their house didn't sell. It sat out there for 3 months or 6 months. Now we're just going to stay. The majority of the time, they're not staying. They're just not sure what they're going to do. And so, great. What specifically is the benefit for you to stay? Well, we're just frustrated. We just decided we're not going somewhere. Now, sometimes it happens where they were going to build a house or they're going to do something and like the circumstance completely changed. Maybe they were getting relocated and they didn't end up getting that job and now they're staying. That does happen. But it does happen. But the majority of the time, they are still going to sell their house. Now, again, I go into if you knew I could sell it for you in this market and net you what you need, would you at least consider it? Now, why do I ask that? Because who would say no to that? Well, yeah, if you could give me what I want and get it sold, well, sure, I would consider it. So, just out of curiosity, where were you moving to if your home sold? And why was that important? Well, we were going to Florida. We were going to Louisiana, wherever it is, closer to the grandkids. We're moving to the next county because we want to be closer to the grandkids. If we could make this happen, or if I could make this happen, I mean, if a contract were presented to you today, would you still sell? That's a pretty powerful question because that's going to get them thinking too. If I were to present a contract to you today with an acceptable price, would you accept it? Yeah, I would. Well, great. So there's still a desire to move as long as you don't have to go through what you went through last time, right? Sure. That's exactly why we need to get together. Let me show you how we can do a different approach to getting your home sold and have a much better experience. Are you open to meeting for 15 minutes? I have some availability later today. Would 3 o'clock work or would six be better? And so that was the other thing too. I would always give two times. So you have to know your calendar, but I would give multiple times for meeting with them. I've got some availability later today. Would 4 o'clock work or would 6:30 be better for you? Once you give them two options, they tend to pick one. Let's do 6:30. Now, if you're not available at 6:30, don't give 6:30, right? But it's like giving them two options, and always tried to set the appointment for the same day. That was very, very important. If I could go meet with them today, that's what I wanted to do because I knew there were other people calling them, and I knew that if somebody else got in front of them today, the probability was high that they were going to sign with that person. So, also, always wanted to be first in if possible. I always wanted to be the first person to go meet with them because I could convince them to list with me that I was a great option to help them accomplish their goal and they could sign the documents with me. And so I always wanted to be first in. So that's why I was always trying to get in front of them quickly. But when somebody says we've decided to stay, if I were to present you a contract today with a price that was acceptable to you, would you still sell? Typically, they say yes. So they haven't decided to stay. They're just frustrated with the process. Now, a couple of things as well. And I've mentioned this already, but always set the appointment as soon as possible. So the goal for any expired is to get in front of the seller as quickly as possible. The further out you set the appointment, the higher the chance of the seller canceling. So I know people that used to that from different markets I would talk to that would say, well, if I set the appointment today, it doesn't give me enough time to study the market and do the research and do all of this. We have to get quick at doing that because if I set an appointment today, which is what, Tuesday for Friday, there's an 80% chance that appointment's canceling or they're going to list with somebody else in the meantime. So I wanted to be prepared to go on appointments today. Worst case, I'd set it for tomorrow, but I wanted to set them for today when possible. Just keep that in mind. The higher the cancellation rate, the further out the appointment is. And the higher the success rate, the quicker you get in front of them. So always set it for as quickly as possible. And then what to send. So after I make a phone call and I have a good contact and I have a good information, and let's say I set the appointment, what am I going to do? I'm going to send them a text with my contact information and a link to my reviews. So if you don't have a Google business page or a Facebook page that has reviews, I would recommend setting one up and start getting reviews on there. People look online and people trust online reviews even more so than a referral from a family member or friend. So if you don't have Google reviews, I would highly recommend getting that. And Leo, maybe we can do a training on how to set that up. They're really easy to set up. We'll put one on the calendar. Super easy to set up. But Google business page, very, very important in my opinion, because people go there and look at it. So start getting that set up, get the reviews, and I would text them that link with my reviews as well, so they could go read about the successes that my past clients have had. And then I'm also going to send them an email with all of my contact information and an overview of what I do to get homes sold, including, again, another link to my review. So what was the overview of what I do to get homes sold? Well, the overview was essentially my listing presentation kind of put into email format where I would talk about the different things. Now, why did I do that? Because would people read it all the time? No, but a lot of times they would. They would click it, they would read it. At minimum, they're clicking the link and looking at the reviews. And so I would send that to them so they have an idea of who they're meeting with, as well as what I do to get home sold. The other thing I would do is I would send them from my Google Calendar, I would send them a calendar invite to the appointment. Now, the nice thing about the calendar invite is if they click yes and accept it, you know that appointment is happening. And so, very important as well, I would always send a calendar invite, even if it was same day, it's 3 hours, 4 hours from now, I'm going to send them a calendar invite. So now they get a text from me, they get an email from me with an overview and all my contact info. They get a calendar invite from me as well. And then if I set this appointment for the next day, let's say I set it for the next day, I would do a call to them confirming. So I wouldn't call and say, hey, I just wanted to make sure you were still wanting to meet today. I would just assume the appointment was happening and I would call and say, hey, it's Michael if they didn't answer. Hey, it's Michael. I'm looking forward to meeting with you today at 4 o'clock. I'll be at your home. If you have any questions, give me a call. And so that was my confirmation. And so I did that all the time. And then if they did need to cancel, they would tend to call back or text and cancel or reschedule, and that's okay. But that was my way of confirming. I was never saying, because a lot of agents will call and say, "Hey, I just wanted to confirm that today still works for you." You're giving them a way out. By calling and saying, just assuming it's still happening. Hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you today at 4 o'clock. I'll plan on being in your house. Looking forward to it. Right? Something like that works a lot better. But what I found as well is that when I did this process, when I sent them a text, when I sent them my link, my reviews, when I sent them an email, and I sent them a calendar invite, those appointments tend to stick. And so rather than, because sometimes before I started doing this, I would go show up to somebody's house and they wouldn't be there. And, I'd set it 3 or 4 days out. I'd be like, well, if I don't call to confirm, then there's no chance of me getting rejected. And so I wouldn't call and confirm. I'd drive to their house. It was 30 minutes away. I'd get there, nobody's home. And now I just wasted a bunch of my time. So making sure I did this, the calendar invite, especially once they accept that, the probability of the appointment happening is very high. And this was my expired process. Super simple, super effective, not overcomplicated, not a lot of fluff. It's literally picking up the phone, having the conversations, knowing how to overcome the objections, and that's it. And keep in mind too, these objections we went through, these are about the only objections you're going to receive. I'm going to sell it myself, taking it off the market, decided to stay, found another agent. What do you do different? Sticking with my same agent, um, selling with a local realtor in the area. That's it. There's like when calling expires, that's the cool thing. There's like 5 or 6 objections that you're going to get, and that's it. So once you know how to overcome those 5 or 6 objections, you start setting a lot of appointments. And so that's what I also liked about expireds is there's not like it's rare that you get some off the wall crazy objection. Usually it's the same objections every single time. So the better you get at overcoming those, the easier it is. Now, Leo, if you could post our script book too. Um, we have our script book. It's on networkglobalagents.com, of course. Leo can post it as well. But our script book is in there. There's tons of seller scripts, there's listing expired scripts, all kinds of things. But make sure you go through and review those as well because once you get good at making those phone calls and it becomes comfortable, this is a massive opportunity. This is also a massive opportunity in 2026 for all of us on this call because so many more homes are expiring. Think about this. We have more homes hitting the market now. We have a lot of markets are shifting from seller markets to more balanced markets. Some markets are even buyer markets now. There are homes that are sitting longer, days on markets going up. Homes are sitting longer, and that means that more homes are coming off the market from either canceling or expiring. So if you look at local MLSs, like I looked at St. Louis, there was on January 1st, there were 628 new expireds, and then another couple hundred canceled. And I was talking to Joe Geary, one of our agents. He was a team member of mine for a long time, started with us when he was 19. I was talking to him a couple days before New Year's. We used to make New Year's Day expired calls all the time as a team. I'd have my team come in, we'd call on New Year's Day, and it was a great day. And I was talking to him on the 29th or 30th, and I was like, yeah, there's going to be a big expired day. He's like, oh man. He's like, yeah, he ordered Vulcan 7 again. And he texted me on New Year's Day at like 10. He's like, just got my first appointment, first call, first listing appointment. And so he was making calls on New Year's Day. Massive opportunity. And so he set multiple, I think two or three appointments that day. And so there's a big opportunity. But what we're going to see is more homes canceling, more homes expiring. A lot of agents got into this business during COVID 2020, 2021, and they don't have the skill set to keep a listing because they would list properties, it would sell immediately with multiple offers, no appraisals, no inspections. And now they're facing the fact that they have to price correctly. They have to have the conversations with their sellers weekly to get price adjustments. And a lot of people are losing their listings now because they don't have the skill set to keep a listing longer than say 30 days or 60 days. And so that's a big opportunity for everyone on this call that we are going to experience more canceled and expired listings this year, which means more opportunity for us to go out and get more business. So think of this as a pillar. I often look at my business as like the chair I'm sitting in has 4 legs on it. If one leg gets kicked out, my chair topples. If I have 6 legs in this chair and one gets kicked out, my business continues to be strong. So think of this as a pillar. I'm a firm believer that our database, past clients, family, friends, that is a pillar of business. And then we need to be looking at how do we add additional pillars into our business? Expireds could be one of those. So if right now, if my business is 100% referral based and I'm looking to increase my revenue for 2026, I may need to add a second pillar. So maybe I look at expireds as adding a second pillar. Now, once I get good at expireds and start generating revenue from it and build systems around it, then I can look to add a third pillar and a fourth pillar. So over time, I have 5 or 6 different pillars to my business. Now, in my business, I started with expireds. I started completely backward, but I started with expireds and then I moved to FSBOs and then I started to wisen up and I started calling past clients and staying in touch with my database. So I had those 3 pillars. Then I added internet leads as a fourth. Then we added circle prospecting as a fifth pillar. And those were kind of the 5 pillars that we focused on, especially as I grew my team. Keep in mind though, circle prospecting pretty much went away. If you look at circle prospecting, what that is just calling around neighborhoods. There's not a lot of opportunity there, in my opinion, because of like the robocall and the spam blockers and all of that. So auto dialing neighborhoods. So that pillar went away. And so we have to keep that in mind. We never want to be reliant on just one pillar of business because if that pillar stops, our business stops as well. So we have to have multiple pillars to our business, but also we don't want to add 3 or 4 pillars at once. We want to have one solid pillar that's solidified, that's generating revenue for us, and then we add a second. We build that up, we start making money from it, then we add a third, and we continue to add those pillars until we have 3, 4, 5 pillars of business that are generating us the revenue we want to earn. Sometimes, too, maybe right now we have a database and we're getting a lot of repeat and referral business from it, but we're doing nothing to keep in touch with our database. So we know so many people that are reaching out to us. What could we do to add to that now? And maybe we could double our business just by adding to that database pillar. So it's important to be looking at where our business is coming from and then looking to see if we want to add in. But I'm a big believer that if you want quick business and you want to build your business quickly, expireds is one of the fastest ways to do it. Where you could literally, like, you could start calling expireds right now and be on an appointment tonight and have a new listing. You could go get a new listing today from somebody that you just talked to. It's a fantastic way to go get business now, and it's a fantastic way to build your business. But also in 2020, 2021, 2022, in the market in St. Louis, there weren't a lot of expireds because homes were selling fast. So that was a pillar that really dried up. So again, that's why it's important to have other pillars of business as well, not to be solely reliant on one. I'll give you one more example. Foreclosure. There's a couple of foreclosure agents out of St. Louis that they listed the majority of the foreclosure homes in '08 and '09. They were doing $100+ million in foreclosure business. And today they do like 5 to 6 million, which is still a good business. Don't get me wrong, but it's pales in comparison to 100 million that they had. And so that pillar dried up for them, and it appears they didn't figure out how to pivot. I mean, think of all of the probably buyer leads they received off all of those hundreds of listings that they were taking each year. There was a massive opportunity there to build a really good business, but they were so focused on that one pillar of getting the deals from the banks that they didn't pivot and expand and include other pillars of the business. So then when the foreclosures dried up, their business dried up with it as well. And that's what we don't want. We never want to be solely relying on one pillar because if it does dry up, that could really hurt our business. So think of your business as legs to your chair or pillars. I need to add more pillars to my business and to continue to strengthen it. So that way it's really like it's economy proof, it's market proof. If I'm 100% working with buyers, then we shift into a really strong seller's market where it's really hard to compete. That's tough. So I need to be looking at my business. How do I add in? So I hope this was helpful. Does anybody have questions?
Yeah, Michael. Uh,
Yeah,
on the script that's in the network, Global Agents intranet, uh, is the objections that you just used during the presentation, are those included?
they are. They're under the seller objections.
Okay, I didn't know if that was this what you were just telling us was your own personal ones, or those
No.
was included.
Yeah, they're all in
Okay,
there under seller objections.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for being on. Anybody
I've
else other
enjoyed it.
questions?
I've enjoyed it. Every time I think I just like need to like do your thing in my like put it in my buds in my ear, so when I'm talking to someone, I can hear your voice. It's kind of encouraging. Hey, if they can do it for presidents, then maybe like it would work for me.
I actually went to a Mike Ferry prospecting school a long time ago in Las Vegas. And so Mike Ferry, there's Tom Ferry, his son, who's a coach. Mike Ferry was like the original real estate coach. He's still around. But I went to it was a prospecting class for 2 days. we got there and we brought our own data, and we had these coaches that would teach us scripting, and then we would make calls to our prospects. So I was calling for sale by owners, expireds, internet leads, all of that. And we had headsets, and we were all in these standing desks. There was a room of like 100 desks, and the coaches would walk by and they would plug into your phone conversation, and they would actually give you guidance on what to say. It was actually really cool. Live conversations with live people, and the coach would come by and plug in and be like, say this, say that, say this, say that. And so it was really neat. It was a neat experience. So kind of like that just made me think of that, Sherry, like being in your ear. Um,
Well, see, I'm telling you, I heard your voice saying, "No, Sherry, stop that. You're talking too much, Sherry. Go on, get to it."
yeah, it was neat though. It was a neat experience. I don't know if they still do it or not, but it was a really cool learning 2 day thing where it was an all day, it was 8 hours a day making phone calls, but it was neat. And then you could walk around and plug into other people like in the class and listen to their conversations. So really neat, really good way to get out of your comfort zone as well. But if anybody is feeling uncomfortable with this, I'm more than happy to script practice if it's something you'd like to do. More than happy to jump on a call and do live scripting around this because I firmly believe in the expired pillar. It's the way I built my business. My first year in real estate, full year in real estate, I sold 28 houses or 36, I can't remember. And then I sold 61 my second year. You know, the bulk of those were expireds. And so that was something where it went from, like having no business. Now, keep in mind too, it took me 3 months, almost 3 months to get my first listing from expired calls. So I called them every day for almost 3 months, and it took almost 3 months. It was a little bit less than 3 months. And it was a lady that called me back because I had no follow-up system as well. And I didn't talk about that. We'll add this on another presentation sometime, but the follow-up is extremely important. I had no follow-up system. So if I talked to you today and I had a good conversation, I built really good rapport, and I didn't set the appointment, the likelihood of me talking to that person again was zero because I had no follow-up. I was literally looking to set the appointment, and that was it. Well, I had a lady call back when she was like, "Hey, we spoke last month." I didn't even remember who she was because I was making so many phone calls. She's like, "Hey, we spoke last month. We have a house in South County. We already, I told you we already moved to North Carolina. The house is vacant. We want you to come list it. So if you wouldn't mind going out there, here's the lockbox code, blah, blah, blah." And I got my first listing. I didn't even remember the conversation because I was talking to so many people and I had no follow-up. So then the light bulb went off and it was like, hey, what if you started taking notes during these calls and followed up with people? That probably makes sense. So again, I didn't have enough money for like a system. And Redx has like a little bit of a CRM built into it now, I believe, but I didn't have a system in place. So I got note cards. So I had little note cards and I hand wrote my notes as I was having the conversation. And then I had a little accordion file that had January, February, March, April, May. And if they were like, no, we're not interested, I would be like, okay, I need to follow up with these people, still this month. So I'd drop it in January. Or if they're like, yeah, we're going to relist, but we're doing this, that, this, we're remodeling, whatever the case was, give us a call back in February. I would drop my note card in February. And that was my follow-up system. And then it evolved into having a CRM and all of that. But again, you don't need a lot of resources to start with this. You just have to start. But again, the follow-up is going to be key um, because the more you follow up with people, the higher the probability is to convert. One thing, statistic I want you to keep in mind, 2% of sales are made on the first call, on a general call. So with expireds, it's a little bit higher because you're calling people that are motivated, but 2% of sales typically are made on the first call. 80% are made between the fifth and 12th contact, which means for a lot of people, I might need to follow up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times before I convert. With expireds, though, you will have a higher first call conversion because you're calling people motivated, ready to sell. And Elizabeth says, how many times do you contact before deleting it? And do you leave voicemails? I did not leave voicemails, Elizabeth. That's a really good question. I did not leave voicemails. Um, I know some agents that do, but I would just call multiple times a day. So I was calling that same contact 2 to 3 times a day, which might seem like insane, but what it does is it creates curiosity. Like, why does this number keep calling me? And people would tend to answer. I wouldn't always be happy, but they would answer, and I would get a pickup. So I did not leave voicemails. I know some people that do. I've seen trainers on expireds like 50-50. Some say do it every time, some say don't. My experience, I never left voicemails. I would continue to call, and I would actually call how many times before deleting? I would call a lot. I would call 25 times plus um, before I kind of gave up on them. And so I called a lot of times, that's just one of the things where I'm a firm believer in continuing to call until somebody says, quit calling me. So that's with follow up too. If I had a great conversation with somebody today and I call back in 2 weeks or whatever my follow up time is, and they don't answer, I don't assume they're ghosting me. And then I call them a second time, they don't answer. The third time they don't answer, I'm going to keep calling that person. Now, when I do follow up calls, I am leaving a voicemail every single time. And I'll also send a text as well, letting them know I left a voicemail. But I don't assume somebody is ghosting me until they say, quit calling me. Once they say, quit calling me, then I'll stop. So just keep that in mind too. Continue to call. Don't worry about seeming annoying or, it's that's our job. Our job is to follow up with people. Our job is to help them accomplish their goal. And really, I feel like with expireds as well, it's more about a mindset. Like I firmly believe that I was the best opportunity people had to get their home sold because I was going to care the most. I was going to provide the best service. I was going to go above and beyond to help them accomplish their goal. And so that was the mindset I had when I would go on these appointments. That if they list with somebody else, they're going to list with somebody else that doesn't care as much, that's not going to go above and beyond. So it's my responsibility to get in front of them to help them accomplish the goal. So, Cindy, do you have a question?
No, I'm so sorry. I unmuted on accident. I'm
Oh, yeah,
listening.
no problem. Okay. No,
You were
no
in my
worries.
pocket. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
Good stuff. Thank you so much for
No,
sharing.
thanks for being on. No, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else, any questions? No, let's see. Kevin. Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you being on. Let me stop
Hey,
my share.
Michael, it's not a question, but David Eubank on Facebook says, hoping they don't answer. So he's probably referring to maybe people.
Yeah,
He's hoping people would not pick up the
yeah.
phone.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, hoping they don't answer. That was my mom. I was just like, don't answer, don't answer, don't answer, don't answer. And then they would, and I'd be like terrified. I'd be like, "Ugh." Right. Yeah. So it's gonna happen. All of that stems from not having the confidence in knowing what to say. That's why script practicing is super, super important. That's something I didn't mention. I had a script practice partner with a guy that was in Colorado, that somehow we linked up somehow. Stacy, thank you. Appreciate you being on. I know you got to go. Thank you. Kenitha, thank you as well. Um, but yeah, I had a script practice partner with a guy out of Colorado. I don't remember how we linked up, but we would call each other and we would script practice. So we wouldn't even say hi, how are you? Like no conversation stuff. He would call me or I would call him and we would dive right into the script. We'd run it for about 10 minutes and then we'd hang up and start making our calls. So that's something too. Get a script practice partner. He and I were both calling expireds, and that was what we did to overcome. So we did that about 7:45, I think. It was earlier for him because he was a different time zone. Um, but yeah, we would make those script calls and it worked really well. And that's what Elizabeth, that's my issue. I get on the call and I typically freeze up and it feels like I'm losing the seller. Yeah, no, very normal, Elizabeth. Until we get proficient, and the way we get proficient at this is through practice. And if we're only going to practice when we're making the live calls, we're probably not going to get good enough to be able to do this. So we have to get a lot of repetition. The more repetition we do, the better we get. And then what's going to happen over time is that when a seller gives you an objection, you're going to spit out the objection handler and you're going to be like, I can't believe I just said that. Because it's just going to roll off your tongue and feel natural. And that's what happens with scripting is that over time, once you get really good at scripting, it becomes a natural part of your dialogue and it just starts to sound like who you are. Because when you do a script right now and you haven't done it before, it's going to be awkward. It's not going to sound like you. And it's never going to sound like you if you don't practice it. But the more you practice it, the better it's going to get. And it's just going to start to roll off your tongue and become part of your dialogue. When they say, I've already hired an agent. And you say, that's great that you've hired an agent. Have you signed paperwork with them? No, we haven't. Out of curiosity, would you be open to getting a second opinion? I understand you have someone in mind, but if you were going to have some sort of surgery, you most likely would get a second opinion, wouldn't you? Well, sure. Well, I know this isn't surgery, but it is financial surgery on your home, and it certainly wouldn't hurt to hear what I have to say on how I get home sold, would it? It's a script, but it didn't sound like a script necessarily because it's just part of my dialogue. And so, yeah, Sherry, if you guys want to practice, yeah, I'll be more than happy to get on and do script practice calls for sure. Because that's the nice thing about practice too, is that if you mess up, who cares? It's practice. You're supposed to mess up, right? And even the best people that are good at scripting, they weren't born natural scripting people. They're people that practiced a lot. So at one point they were terrible as well, and they were nervous and they said uhs and ums and didn't know what to say and got stumped. And but the more you practice this, the better it gets, the easier it gets, and the more business you get. And that's the way I looked at it, is the faster I get at making my script calls, the faster I'm going to get more business, or the faster I get good at my scripting, excuse me, and the more calls I make, the better I'm going to get. So yeah, Leo, like Leo runs the remember Leo, here's an example. Leo on the call,
Yeah,
he does the agent orientation. Remember the first time we had a test run of the agent orientation?
that was terrible. I couldn't even say a word. Like I froze.
Yeah, and now he does a really good job at it. And so again,
Ah,
we have
thank you.
practice. It's practicing that stuff, and the more you practice it, yeah, he was super nervous, and it happens. But the more we practice it, and the better we get at it, the easier this becomes, and the more business we get. And what's cool too is like you could start calling expireds today and be absolutely terrible at it, but then in 3 months you could be sounding like a pro. In 90 days, you could be a totally different person. You could be an expired expert teaching. Like within less than a year, I was teaching expired trainings at the office I was in. Less than a year. I started off terrible. And then by the end of the year, I was really good at it, taking a lot of listings. And then people started wanting me to train on it. And it was interesting that it can happen quickly if we're willing to put the time in and put the practice in. But I highly recommend practicing the scripts, link up with each other, run script scenarios. But yeah, we'll figure out some time to look at the calendar and throw a script practice on. Love for everybody to jump on that. And because I'm a firm believer this is a great way to get business. It really is. Anybody else, any questions? Yeah, we could probably, let me look at my calendar, Sherry, and we could, if not today, we can definitely do it tomorrow. So, yeah. Oh, that's you two talking to each other. I'm sorry. Okay, that's Elizabeth and Sherry. Okay, cool. Cool. Anybody else, any questions? All right. Well, thank you all for being on. I greatly appreciate it, and we will talk to you all soon. If you haven't signed up for the Success Conference, we have that coming up February 3rd. It's the in-person event. Please sign up. Leo, if you'll post it, it gets sent out every Friday in the weekly buzz, but I know a lot of you have signed up. But if you intend to join that, please sign up, and appreciate you all being here, and we will talk very soon. There's the registration link as well if you haven't signed up. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Have a great
everyone.
day.